Ooh, today we're going to rate and grade each team's off-season moves in the VCT. Now, this is not a power ranking, okay? This is me grading them based on, do their off-season moves make sense to me? So, for instance, let's say a team like Fnatic, who I still expect to be pretty good, but maybe I don't like the fact that they got rid of Durka, so maybe they won't get as high as a grade, but I still think they'll be pretty good. Do you understand? Hopefully, let's go through it. We won't be doing China because I don't know enough about the players in China to really give, a fair and balanced view. But for the other three regions, let's dive in. And we'll start here with Boom Esports. And what I've done for you is created a nice little who have they got rid of, who are they bringing in, and then over here, we're going to grade them. So for Boom, they got rid of Zespi, and they brought in DOS9. They kept the rest of the team. I personally like when essential teams keep, at least most of their team, because they earned the spot, although Boom is a weird situation, I guess. But for them, I'm going to give them a B+, because you keep most of the team. You bring in maybe an improvement here as well, so they're getting a B+. Moving on to DFM, and this is what DFM did. They got rid of basically all their team apart from May. Sess is playing as a sub, and they brought in 4 new players here, and we have seen DFM play, and they have been pretty good. But either way, even if they hadn't been pretty good in that tournament, I still would have given them an A. The reason I give DFM an A is because if you think about it, if you were DFM, what would you say? Like, what should you do? Well, you probably want to keep your best player, May, and bring in some other new players. And that's exactly what they did. Moving on to DRX, they obviously let go of Buzz, Foxy9, and Bane, and brought in Athan, Hyunmin, and Freeing. And I'm going to give them a C. The reason I'm going to give them a C, basically it all has to do with Buzz. Buzz is pretty good. So, yeah, I just didn't really agree with this move. I don't have too much of a problem with the Foxy9 and Bane one, but Buzz is going to be hard to replace, and you let him go to, like, one of your main rivals, so they get a C. Genji, they get rid of Lakia and Meteor and bring in Yeoman and Foxy9. Now, people probably think that this is maybe an upgrade, Lakia to Yeoman, but Meteor to Foxy9, probably a bit of a downgrade. So I'm going to give them a B-. Another reason why I'm going to give them a B- is because obviously we know that the 5 players that Genji had, we know that that team can win an international tournament. With these players, who knows? Maybe these guys crumble under the big pressure, of a grand final or something. Global got rid of basically everyone. They got rid of everyone. They brought in a bunch of new players, including my boy Elevated down here as coaches as well, Juvenile and Elevated. And for that, I'm going to give them an A. And again, do I think the Global will be the best team in the league in Pacific? No. But from where they were, making a whole new team, to me makes sense, right? You bring in a bunch of players who have, the potential to be very good. So this to me just makes a lot of sense. They get an A. Paper Rex just got rid of their assistant coach Bulb. I'm going to give them a B. I think, we've seen Paper Rex in this offseason, and obviously they've done pretty well in those offseason events that they played. But I do still think, during this offseason, there was maybe some rumblings of, should Paper Rex make a roster move? Maybe, right? They chose not to. I don't hate that, right? So they get a B. RRQ got rid of Elmi Mort, bring in Kush. They bring in Warbirds as an assistant coach as well. They're going to get a B-. I just feel like with RRQ, could you do more? Maybe. Maybe a B- there for RRQ. Simpreza, now Nongshim Red Force. They did nothing, as you can see. But that's fine by me. They get an A because, they were really good. T1 got rid of Excura, Saya, and Rossi, and brought in Buzz, Meteor, and Sylvan. Of course, for T1, these are some big names, some good players, so they get an A+. This one, I think is kind of a bit obvious. They're going for it, and I like that. So good for you, T1. Talon did nothing, as you can see. And for Talon, I'm going to give that a B+. They did make champs, so, that they are a good team, and I think, they can continue to improve. I don't hate them doing nothing. Team Secret. They just changed their coach, which for me, it's going to give them a B-, because this is a team that is always on the precipice, and who knows, maybe that coaching change will make the difference, but I do also think, like, is there potential here for upgrades? They did upgrade kind of through the season. I feel like, maybe with another change or two, maybe you would be even better. Who knows, but I'll give them a B-. Zeta. Got rid of Laz, who retired, Hiroron and Uran, and they brought in 3 new players, and for them, I'm going to give them a B+, because again, did some changes need to be made? Yes. Obviously, the last one was kind of enforced on them. I still have some questions, though, about the whole Zeta project. So there's still some things that I'm not fully on board with, but, they did need to make some roster moves, and they did. So they got a B+. Moving on to EMEA, and we'll start here with Apex. And Apex is actually the only team that I don't know who else they're bringing in yet. We know that they're bringing in Floor. That we know that Solcas and Kayak have gone elsewhere. What does this get for Apex? Well, it gets an A. The reason this gets an A, even though we don't know who their 5th player is, and so you might think surely that's not worthy of a high grade. Let's be real. They're an Ascension team. They lost 2 of their players as well. Who were they going to pick up that would create as much buzz and excitement for this team as they did when they picked up Floor? Even if without knowing who their 5th player is, right? Who realistically could they have picked up that would keep people actually interested in this team as much as Floor? Probably no one. And so I think that's just a win based off what they did in the offseason here. So a win for Apex overall. Moving on to BBL, who got rid of basically the whole team, brought in a completely new team. And for them, I'm going to give them a C+. You can't really see it there, but it's a C+. The reason I'm giving them a C+ is because they're a Turkish team, but now for the first time they're fielding a non-full Turkish roster. Also, Elite I thought was really good last year, so it's like, could we have kept Elite maybe? We also know there's a ton of good Turkish talent out there. Instead, they've gone with this roster. So, and I don't hate this roster, by the way, but I do think, there are other options that I might have preferred for BBL. Moving on to Fnatic, who, Mini is now fully gone. Dirk are obviously gone. They bring in Milan as assistant coach. They bring in Kayak from Apex. They are getting a C. Obviously, the reason they're getting a C is because how likely is Kayak to be better than Dirk? In my opinion, it's not that likely, right? Dirk is really good. I mean, the only reason this isn't even lower, to be honest, is because I think it is fair to potentially argue that Fnatic maybe needed to make a change of some kind. Foot got rid of CNED, brought in Zeus, and for that they get an A-. Feel like that's perfectly reasonable thing for Foot to do. Keeping the majority of this team I think makes sense. They've been consistently a pretty good team, so no problems there for Foot. Gentle Mates have made a lot of changes, right? Getting rid of 4 of their players, bringing in 4 new players. Zipan obviously probably the most notable one, but also some players here from kind of tier 2 EMEA. And for them, I'm giving them a B+, because they did need to make changes. The reason this isn't higher is because I am a tank fan, but I don't hate them making changes. I think that makes sense, to be honest. So yeah, that's all fine. They get a B+. Giants remove Fatinho, Huddy, Redgar, bring in Runner, Westside, Tomazi. Runner and Tomazi obviously we saw in tier 1 last year on different teams. On Westside, a tier 2 player. They also get a B+. Again, making some of these changes makes sense. The only reason this isn't probably higher is because was there potential to be a little more explosive with some of these signings, perhaps. Moving on to Karming Core, who, again, got rid of most of their team. Brought in, mostly a new team with some pretty big names. Elite was very good last year. As I said, we all know Sugetsu. We all know Sadak. What does that get Karming Core? It gets Karming Core a B+, and some of you will probably be thinking, why is that not higher? The reason is that I've given them a B+, is because they've got rid of Narrate. And Narrate, I think, is like a proven S-tier level player. Right, and so for me, anytime you get rid of a proven S-tier level player, and you can argue that, hey, they're bringing in S-tier level players, though, TMV. Yeah, but hear me out, right? Sadak is having to call in English. Sugetsu. Is Sugetsu still an S-tier player? Maybe, right? Maybe, but I can't say with 100% certainty that that's the case. And the same is maybe even true for Elite, on a non-Turkish team, how will he do? There are questions here for Karming Core, and I'm sure maybe some of this will work out, but maybe some of it won't, and you have gotten rid of a proven, very strong player. That's the reason they're getting a B+. Moving on to Koi, who removes Shadow, Camo, and Stark, so bring in Filu, Soulcast, and Flyer. They're getting a B for this. I think, again, for Koi, it made sense to make some changes. We'll see, but, I don't think a ton of people are super excited for this Koi roster, thinking that they might go deep in tournaments or whatever. Navi have gone for a change of Sugetsu, Zipan, and Artist leaving, with Koala Noob, Ruxic, and Hero coming in. And for Navi, I'm going to give them a C+. The reason I'm going to give them a C+ is because whilst I think it's completely fair to argue that changes did need to be made, the question I have really is this roster going to be better than the old Navi? And I think most people would probably lean no. And so for me, that's why they're getting a C+. Moving on to Team Heretics, they did nothing. That's absolutely fine. They get an A. Team Liquid released Enzo, Mystic, and Yampi, brought in Camo, Patek, and Kamek, and for that they're gonna get a B. Again, similar sort of thing where it's like, yeah, we probably did need to make some changes, but are these the changes that are definitely gonna get us there? And then Vitality, they let go of Sender and Runner, bring in Les and Durka. This is an obvious A+ here for Team Vitality, really going for it, shooting for the stars, bringing in 2 absolute mega stars. Yeah, has to be an A+. And then finally, we have Americas. And for Americas here, we'll start with 100 Thieves, who obviously Bang left them and they brought in Xander, and I gave them a B+. And 100 Thieves was a team I was struggling with because I was kind of thinking, should 100 Thieves make changes? And I don't know. They had a very strange year, very streaky year, right? Where they were just super hot for like the middle part of the season and then, you know, kind of okay for the other hot parts of the season. So I didn't really know what to think of 100 Thieves, so I just kind of defaulted to giving them a kind of like, okay, B+. 2G, or Half-Life 2, as this logo seems to suggest. They just brought in Gobera, who is kind of a forced change because one of their players who they ascended with can't play because they're too young. Not going to blame them too much for that, so they're going to get an A- because, you know, they're giving players who deserve their chance a chance, so that's all fine. Cloud9, haha. Got rid of Rooney and Vanity, brought in Vic and Rossi, then got rid of Rossi and brought in Mitch. And for Cloud9, obviously, this has happened in the last couple of days. They're going to get a D. There's really, obviously, no other way of putting this, but, like, obviously the whole way that this thing has played out with Rossi, you know, isn't a good look. They put extra pressure on themselves. Essentially, their whole recruitment process clearly didn't work initially, and so they've had to redo it. You know, wasting a couple months in the off season during that time. So yeah, not ideal for Cloud9. EG, let go of Jorgamo and Apoth, bring in Ye and Icy. I'm gonna give them a C+. Again, getting rid of Jorgamo is a big loss. Bringing in Ye, I mean, this is the thing. The reason I've given them a C+ and not lower, to be honest, is because I do think that, okay, you're bringing in Ye. There is at least a buzz and excitement around this, and Icy, you know, was a solid, good player last year. I think it'll be fun at the very least, but obviously losing Jorgamo is a very big loss. Furia, get rid of Nozwa and Jandy, bring in Heat and Rafa. They're going to get a C, just because I think, like, maybe we needed more here, Furia. G2, let go of Icy, bring in Jorgamo. That's an A+. They're hoping is the final piece to, you know, take this team to kind of winning tournaments. We shall have to see if that is the case, but I think at the very least you can be pretty excited for G2 and think that this move just makes a ton of sense. For Crew, they get rid of Heat and Klaus. They bring in Adverso and Mazzino. For them, I'm going to give them a B+. The reason is I think Mazzino, you know, good pickup, played very well last year. I do think that Heat was one of their best players, though. You know, so that one was a little bit of a, like, okay. And Adverso, I like Adverso. I thought he played well in the Ascension tournament as well. So moving on to Leviathan. We get rid of Aspas and Mazzino. We bring in the Tank and Demon 1. And for that, I'm going to give them a C+. The reason I'm going to give them a C+ is because we've essentially gone from what I would call, like, known quantities of good, right? And Aspas and Mazzino, like, these two are good, or very good, right? We know that. And you've brought in two players, I think, who are kind of, like, could be very good, right? But what Demon 1 is going to turn up? Natank, you know, what Natank is going to turn up? There's going to be a lot more eyes on him than were on Gentle Mates. And I'm a Natank believer, but we'll have to see, right? Loud. Remove Les and Sadak, bring in Vinny and DG Zin. This, unfortunately, is going to be a D. I mean, the only way I can put this is you've got arguably, you know, one of, if not the best IGL and Valorant history leaving, and one of the most consistent best players in the world over the past couple of years leaving. Like, it's nothing against Vinny and DG Zin, but it's like, look who left. MIBR basically got rid of most of their team, brought in, you know, Aspas, obviously the big name, Nozwa as well, and a couple players from tier 2. But that to me gets an A+, right? Like, if you're MIBR, you needed to make wholesale changes. They did make wholesale changes, and one of them is Aspas. That's pretty good. NRG, get rid of Crashies and Victor. Bring in Mada and Verno. They're going to get an A- for that. Again, it felt like NRG, you know, they had to make some level of changes. I think most people were on board with that. And, you know, the players that they brought in, I think people are pretty excited about that this NRG team could be very good. So I'm feeling pretty good about NRG. And then finally, we come to Sentinels, who obviously had Tens and Sassy retire. And they brought in Narrate and Bang. And for Sen City, the final team, I'm going to give them an A-. The reason I'm going to give them an A- is because, again, I think the rate is just a really good pickup for Sentinels in general. You know, Bang for 10s, you know, let's call that, you know, roughly equal. Considering, you know, the level that this team is at already, you know, you would hope then that this team could be very good going into the future. And so, yeah, they get an A-. So those were my grades for the teams and how they did in the offseason. Let me know which team I got the most wrong in the comments down below. I'm sure you will all be furiously typing away, defending whatever team you support. With that said, let me know what you think in the comments, and have a nice day.